heads up.
Gotta play myself over here.
These seats are
I think these are the chair ones.
And don't know. And men are all not
That's hard. I don't miss that.
I had people come in and I left the place and say, you run this charity, we have this inside staff, we run this. I have no interest in running a large staff. I have no. Right. Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we said next week here, possibly? Okay.
We need to get up and move.
I'm not sure.
I just don't want to be in their way.
I'm going to.
I'm gonna sit right here. We're gonna think. Yeah, it's okay.
We're trying to see because Congresswoman's going to sit right here. I'll just ask her.
Oh, she's sitting. All right. Okay.
Most likely because she's going to be.
Okay. Let's see if I just see another video. And the camera is too. Well, I'm gonna just sit for now. Okay. And she can be this, right? She's gonna be right here. I might as well just sit right here. Right here. They said they don't know if we can do that because this is where the camera gonna be. So. I don't know if we can be right here or over here. Yeah. I don't know if we can be right here or like right here. Over here, period. Like in the back area. Early because I'm not trying to stand. Yeah. I should have left at 6:15. Yes. Yeah. That's okay. Thank you. Thank you. All right. Hi there. Yeah. I would be trucking.
Troublemakers always. Oh, you know that? Yeah, you know the house is this year.
Well, I hope so.
Oh,
Because one
oh,
of
is
my
it?
grandparents
trying to, I might stand up. There's some, left. I think this is a line, but I kind of skipped a little bit because I didn't know what that was. I already did that.
I'll do it.
I just want some.
Yeah, I just we already had our yeah. I was like, where y'all? She was sitting right.
But I do have to go around.
I'm actually walking up to her. I didn't think she was gonna be here yet.
Right. Is there any space still there?
I literally just squeezed it.
I was so upset.
She's so tiny. She's sat here. Yo, I woke up on her. I was like, did he bust us down? I was like, she was so looking like. She's like, bust it down. Look at it. I'm saying, I just needed to.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Thank you for coming out this evening. We did not know for sure whether or not this would work. And you never hear about a watch party on Capitol Hill. Usually it's out, in some other kind of venue. But we thought this is a people's house. Why not? And so I know that there won't be quite enough seats for everyone, but please feel free to stand around on the side. But find a seat. If you open, fill up all the seats. I think you'll be okay. We're going to go through this program in about 1 hour. We want to make sure that our people who are here today, our presenters, have an opportunity to do what they have to do. Some of them, are in the media and they may have to do a media call. And then we'll remain for Ms. Stacey Abrams afterwards to see her response. And so with that, I'm going to make some introductions. Here we are. Our panelists for this evening are individuals that you have seen on television, you have heard them on podcasts and broadcasts, and they are basically thought leaders. And we're so pleased to have them here with us this evening. They all volunteered their time in order to be here and participate in this State of the Union Party Watch that we're having, and to create a discussion about what is going on. I'm hopeful that those of you who've been paying attention will remember all of the things this president has said, the initiatives that he's talked about, the lies that he, to compare it with what you're going to hear tonight so that you'll be able to have a discussion with your coworkers, your friends, and your neighbors and give them some clarity about what he's saying and what he's actually doing. With that, I'd like for you to meet Neri Tandon, the president and CEO of the Center for American Progress. And next, we have Janet McGurr, who is president and CEO of Unidos US. Malcolm Nance, the counterterrorism and intelligence expert, New York best-selling author, Mr. Malcolm Nance. Give him a big round of applause. And managing editor of the Beat DC. Blade, columnist. Give them all a you a little bit about them. Nera Tandon is the president and CEO of the Center for American Progress and the CEO of the Center for American Progress Action Fund, where she focuses on how both organizations can fulfill their missions to expand opportunity for all Americans. Tandy also served in both the Obama and Clinton administrations. She previously served as senior advisor for health reform at the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, and in that role, she was involved with healthcare reform policies and worked with Congress and stakeholders provisions Tandon received her Bachelor of Science from the University of California, Los Angeles, that is UCLA, and her law degree from Yale Law School. Janet Murgia, President and CEO of Unidos US. Janet Murgia is the President and CEO. Again, it is actually Unidos US. Los Angeles, U.S., previously known as the National Council of La Raza, the largest national Hispanic civil rights and advocacy organization in the United States. She began her career in Washington, D.C. as legislative to former Kansas Congressman Jim Slattery. She then worked at the White House from 1994 to 2000, ultimately serving as Deputy Assistant to President Clinton, providing strategic and legislative advice. She received 3 degrees from the University of Kansas, a bachelor's degree in journalism, a bachelor's degree in Spanish, and a JD from UK School of Law. Give her a round of applause. When the microphone don't work, remember you got a voice. Use it. Malcolm Nance, counterterrorism, and NYT best-selling author. Malcolm Nance is one of the world's leading experts in the strategy and tactics of Al-Qaeda organization, international terrorism, global security policy, and torture.
Jamming.
He's a United States Navy senior chief petty officer with more than 3 decades of field experience in anti-terrorism, counterterrorism, intelligence, and combat operations. He has trained and advised numerous international and government agency personnel in terrorist tactics and countering extremist ideology, including the U.S. Department of Defense and U.S. Department of Homeland Security. Malcolm Nance has also authored several books, including New York Times bestsellers, The Plot to Hack America and the Plot to Destroy Democracy. Nance is a graduate of Salisbury College with a bachelor's degree. Give him a big round of applause. Did you get it to work? It shows everyone. Monica Klein. Monica Klein is a founding partner at Seneca Strategies, where she serves as chief communications strategist for local and statewide campaigns, nonprofits, and political parties. Klein brings years of experience in communications, media relations, and brand strategy to Seneca Strategies. Klein is a co-founder and communications director for the Broad Room, an activist training camp for millennial women in New York. Klein serves on the associate board of the Red Hook Initiative, a nonprofit focused on providing education and job training to low-income youth in Brooklyn. Big round of applause. Tiffany Cross. Tiffany D. Cross is the co-founder, managing editor, and curator of The Beat DC, a political platform highlighting the diversity that leads the nation's capital. Tiffany previously served as a senior advisor at the National Education Association, as the manager of news and public affairs, and as the liaison to the Obama administration for BET Works. Prior to that, she served as director of communications at Brilliant Corners Research and Strategies. Big round of applause. Next, we have Lincoln Anthony Blades, Teen Vogue columnist. Lincoln Anthony Blades is a print and digital journalist, social critic who writes about politics, finance, race, and culture. Lincoln has written for publications such as Rolling Stone, Ebony, NBC's The Griot, Huffington Post, and Jet Magazine. He currently writes the Do Better column at Teen Vogue, where he conducts interviews with politicians, activists, and major newsmakers. He's a graduate of York University. And so, we're going to get right into our panel discussion. There are many ways that we could have gone with this, and our panelists here are very well versed in aspects of the investigations. Some of them have been following Trump long before he became president. Some of them know about his background in New York, but we're going to talk about several things. We're going to talk about deplorable Trump's shutdown in immigration, Trump's attacks on civil rights, Russia investigation and Trump corruption, Trump foreign policy and health care. With that, let us start with this president who distorts and basically does not tell the truth. According to the Washington Post, Donald Trump has made 8,459 false or misleading claims since taking office. How are the American people supposed to believe a single word from this president during his State of the Union address when he has demonstrated time and time again that he is a liar who cannot be trusted? Panel, is that true? Is it possible that the President of the United States of America could possibly lie? Yes, Nira?
So I can start off. Here, should I? Let me try. Oh, great. Oh, let me try with this. I know we find ourselves in the halfway mark of this administration, which, just to note, means there's fewer days ahead of us than behind us. So let's give an applause to that. And over the last 2 years, we've learned several lessons. One is that Donald Trump lies every single day. But what's really important about the moment we're in is that I think his lies are coming home to roost. The promises he made to win election are coming home to roost. I'll just lay out a few of those, and I know the panelists have more in detail. But this is a president who promised everyone who had health care under the Affordable Care Act that he would give them something better. Was that true or false? False. He said he'd lower drug prices. He said he'd end offshoring. Instead, companies like Carrier, GM, Foxconn, and Harley-Davidson are actually sending jobs overseas. He said that he'd tax Wall Street and hold them accountable. Has he done that?
Nope. Instead, Trump has rolled back safeguards on Wall Street, eviscerated the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, and given Wall Street and a variety of companies billions in tax cuts. He said he'd protect Medicare and Medicaid from cuts. Did he do that? Instead, he's pushed huge cuts in both through the budget and the ACA repeal proposals, and really because we had a united Democratic caucus in the House over the last 2 years and a united caucus in the Senate, those cuts were stopped, and now we know that we're safe. And one last promise he made was that he would drain the swamp in Washington.
Yeah.
Doesn't seem like he's followed through on that one either. In fact, this administration has the most number of indicted campaign officials, indicted staff of any in recent history. And I think, as Malcolm Nance will tell us, there's more where that's come from. So,
Nira, can I follow up on that?
Yeah, please.
Well,
Janet is eager to tell you.
Well, I just think it's important to state some very critically harmful ways where those mistruths and lies have affected real lives. We're talking about ways that we've seen this administration approach policies and distort them. But let me tell you something, particularly as it relates to our Latino community. The New York Times reported last week that the number of children that were actually separated from their parents could substantially exceed the official administration number of 2,700 because, as the article reveals, the administration actually began separating children in 2017, not the spring of 2018. And we found that more than 700 children were separated during this period. An official from HHS said that while the number is unknown, it could be thousands more. We're talking about real harm, real families, and historical actions being taken by this administration to do what was unthinkable before, to do what we condemned other countries from doing. And now we find ourselves in a situation where there's been no accountability and no responsibility. One of the things I want to do is thank Chairwoman Maxine Waters. Not only is she leading in this area of this room of financial services where we're going to talk about important policies, but I know you played an important role in oversight and making sure that we are going to get to the truth. I know we're joined by other members of Congress here, Sheila Jackson Lee, Congressman Jean Green. These people, all of these voices and yours are going to be extremely important in making sure we get to the truth, and more importantly, that we find those families, those children, and reunite them with their parents. And we're not going to stop until that happens.
Yes.
There are many ways in which we're seeing policies being distorted and tortured, but the families and the lives of young children these children removed from their parents and now still having thousands that we don't even know about and can't track. We've got to fix this, and we've got to make sure that that light of accountability is there. So we need to make sure that we are the truth tellers in all of this, and that we're going to make sure we right these incredible wrongs, because we are all going to be ultimately accountable for that in the end.
Thank you. Mr. Nance, go right ahead. You know a lot about this president.
We're talking about Donald Trump and lies? I can't believe such a thing. Well, actually, I think the Washington Post count is 8,000, but the Toronto, the paper in Toronto, is the Toronto Star? They are not counting double lies or multiple lies. So they're at 4,000 just straight up lies, things that he has pulled out of his head and have introduced to the world. So as you know, I come from the intelligence community, and my background required me for a third of a century to hold a top secret special access program security clearance. That's the top secret clearance. that when they take away your top secret clearance, they give you a regular top secret, okay? No one in my world could ever, ever, ever get their security clearance or be cleared if they told one misleading statement during the security clearance process. Just one. One is enough, because you know what? The investigators are looking for a reason that you would want to not tell the truth. That one time that you lie, right? Like, maybe you did something in elementary school, or maybe you, got drunk in high school. It's an indicator of who you are and whether you can be cleared in our special access programs. The Air Force has a program called the Personnel Reliability Program. It's the program that allows you to be in proximity of nuclear weapons. One misleading statement, you cannot clear for that program. We have a president of the United States who owns the entire nuclear arsenal of the United States. And I can't believe a word out of his mouth when he opens it. What is that? Now, it's one thing that he tells these things because he has something to hide. It's another thing when these lies are seen by our adversaries overseas. They endanger every person in this room, your wives, your husbands, your children, your family. It's one thing to lie to create a human rights catastrophe on our southern border. We now know that the Secretary of Homeland Security has lied right here on Capitol Hill, saying there was no program to separate children from their parents. How can I believe them when they tell me there's going to be an imminent terrorist attack? Because now it may be true. It may be 100% true. It may be true that we have a foreign adversary that is going to carry out an activity in which the President of the United States may need to use executive, lethal combat power to protect this nation. And the first thing people are going to say is, I don't believe you. If we can't trust our elected leaders to, look, with Donald Trump, if he says good morning, you got to run to the window and check, right? Because in my world, where I come from, I deal strictly with empirical fact. I can count the number of airplanes on a runway. I can listen to somebody's conversation and show you a transcript. We do not lie, because your lives, the lives of our families, the defense of this nation is far too important for us to be bragging and braggadocio, whatever you want to call it, right? Locker room talk. It
Mr.
does
Nance,
not work.
he said that he believes President Putin. He says that he wants to get along with him, and he has never denounced him. He has never criticized him. He says they're good friends. And then with Kim Jong-un, he's saying he's in love with him. What's with all of that?
I've written a whole book, right, where it's very clear Donald Trump is an authoritarian. He is our first real, no joking, autocrat president. And the funny thing is, in several of the rooms around here, there's this document where we declared independence from a tyrant king, from an autocrat, right? Look, we're being jammed. But the key to this is, he lies to cover up whatever the truth is. I don't know about you, but you're talking about an ex-KGB officer is running an oligarchy that is trying to topple democracies around the world and create what I call an axis of autocracies. And the United States right now is teetering on autocracy. And the only thing that's holding it up is the guardrails of democracy, the one thing Donald Trump never relied on, right? Because a king doesn't need to have need to rely on your opinion. These hallowed halls that we sit in right now are the last line of defense of this nation. What you're doing, Maxine, oversight. They didn't ever expect to have oversight. Oversight means that democracy is working and can put a check to them. This nation voted for that. This nation voted for you to find out why they're lying. Because prior to this, one lie would have ended a presidency. It did with Richard Nixon. Now we've got a guy who's at 8,000, 4,000, however you want to look at it. So it's up to us on these panels to suss this out, you know? But as far as we're concerned, look, we're about 1 hour from a whole avalanche waterfall of lies. So with that, let me pass it on.
Okay, we're going to move on to Monica Klein.
So the lie that I've been thinking about a lot this week has been a lie about women and what we do with our bodies. Something that really has been in the news recently is if women can do whatever they want with their bodies, apparently we are going to try to kill our children when they come out of us. And so we've seen Politico has recently reported that Trump is going to talk about quote-unquote late-term abortions, claiming that we are all going to commit infanticide. And I'm so frustrated when I see how he is dominating the conversation about this, how the right is constantly talking about late-term abortions, and it doesn't seem like our side is really, like the progressive wing is really pushing back effectively, that we're allowing him to constantly dominate what the language is, how we talk about our bodies. And I'm terrified about what he's going to say about women, because essentially at the end of the day, he can keep saying, you know, we're trying to kill our children, but truthfully, late-term abortions happen maybe 1% of the time, and it's, you know, when there's a medical need for it, and that should be a decision that's between a woman and her doctor and her family, and we should have no say over it. But what he's really saying is that he does not trust women to control their own bodies, that he does not trust us to make decisions for ourselves. Apparently, he trusts men to have guns and do whatever they want with them, but if we control our own bodies, then we're going to, you know, cause havoc in this country. So I'm frustrated by that. I don't even know if I'm gonna watch the State of the Union because I don't even want the lies in my head. I don't wanna hear him talk about unity when really he's co-opting our language of unity to continue to, you know, focus on his authoritarian agenda. He doesn't care about unity. He does not care about women at all. And truthfully, we threaten him, right? That's the reason that he keeps assaulting us. It's the reason he keeps criticizing us, because women, our voices, our bodies threaten him, threaten the patriarchy. So that is the lie that I am the most focused on, that I'm the most frustrated by. I think, you know, this week, it's not just the State of the Union that could really threaten our bodies. It's also the Supreme Court could decide not to rule on a Louisiana law, which would essentially show that they really don't care about precedent, and that they might not care about Roe v. Wade either. And so that's really what I'm frightened by, but heartened that there's so many people here that are thinking about how we can really fight back. Yeah.
Before you go, you did an interview with a journalist, and I remember watching you, and you closed out the program with him saying something to you, and you said something back to him. What did he say to you, and what did you say back to him?
So,
and who was the journalist?
I recently yelled at Tucker Carlson because because he kept telling me that I was trying to kill babies, which is absurd. And I was trying to explain to him that the party that's actually harming children is the one that's tearing families apart at the border and allowing children to die, which is not what the Democrats are doing. I think he said something like, you know, you're not going to answer my question, I really just think less of you. And so I told him I thought less of him as well. And that's basically how the interview ended. I've been getting a lot of friendly tweets from the Republicans now.
We'll move on to Tiffany Cross. I hear you a lot on television. I know you've got a lot you know and a lot you think about this president. Please share it with us.
All right, I will try and be brief as I can. So I just want to say that I think the president lying is only a small part of the problem. The bigger part of the problem is there's too many people across the country who believe those lies. And the bigger lie is the one that the media will perpetuate and the lie that the right will tell themselves. So much of my background for the past 20 years has been in media in some capacity or another. So when you hear people talk about why you had Obama voters switch to Trump voters, or or when you see, outright racist tweets and you hear comments. There was a picture of the governor of Virginia in a picture with racial undertones, and you're like, what the heck is a racial undertone? This is outright racism. Let's call it what it is. When we don't see national outrage of children being separated from their families, we need to call that out. It's because these are not white babies. That's why a lot of people can overlook it and lie to themselves and go about their day as though it's not existing. And we have to be honest about that. So I think we have to challenge people, but this is where I may lose some of you. This is an issue on the right. We also have issues on the left. There are not enough people outraged about what's happening in our own communities. And I have a very eclectic following. I have cousins, I have uncles, I have nieces and nephews. And when I look in my feed of all types of people, I see a whole lot about Cardi B and Offset. I see a whole lot about the latest storyline on Who Gives a Crap reality show. I don't see a lot of what's happening right here on Capitol Hill. And we have to challenge ourselves because that's how this president got elected. I know the last election cycle, there were a lot of young people, a lot of millennials, a lot of people of color who showed up. It still was not enough. And so when we look out across the country at what people care about and how they're voting, and I want to acknowledge there's issues of gerrymandering and voter suppression that run rampant in our communities, but we are the power brokers. We are the people. And so we get lost in this bubble on Capitol Hill, and we can all talk to each other with our highbrow talk about what bill's moving and what lies. And, Malcolm, don't sit next to Malcolm Nance at a party and have him tell you about his, national security stories that have you frightened to leave your house after building a bunker. But in reality, when you go out and talk to other people, they have no idea what's going on. And there are people who don't know the difference between state government and federal government and local government. So that's our responsibility to recognize our own power and use it. So as long as the president keeps lying, hashtag activism will only go so far. Posting is not voting. We have to challenge people on our side to get outraged, and we have to challenge the media to give us the real storyline, tell the truth, and we don't have to have a counterpoint to everything. If there is somebody who comes on and says that the president is separating families, you don't have to have somebody come on and say that's not true. That's the job of media to say we know these things are facts and we have to present them in such a way. And as long as we're consumers for this reality TV-based cable news outlet, which I'm a part of sometimes, but I definitely try to raise the discourse as much as I can, that kind of echo chamber will keep going, perpetuating these falsehoods. So I would challenge everybody in here, buy a newspaper subscription for some of those cousins and friends who aren't really into it. Get active, tell them how to get active on a campaign or get active on a grassroots level, because until we do that, there are too many millions of people who still look at this president's Twitter feed as the gospel.
Ken, go right ahead.
You know what's crazy about going last is that all the good points in your head are taken by the time it comes around to you. The point I was going to make was basically what you were saying is about the media. It doesn't matter how much the president lies if the media is unwilling to call him a liar and to call that thing a lie once it happens. So the one thing I will say that I'm super proud of being in the newsroom of Teen Vogue is that that isn't really a discussion in our newsroom. Now, I go to other newsrooms because I work in different offices, and I realize that there's a vast difference. There's a difference of when Trump says something and they say, well, is that the reality of the situation? Okay, we're going to just write this headline, and the headline's going to literally quote Trump without indicating the fact that he has a history of lying. And that's something that, at least in our office, we make sure that we're not going to do. And yeah, I'm keeping it brief because you guys took my points.
They now call it walking it back. They said he walked it back. They don't say he lied. And so what we need to do is tweet, no more walking back, it's a lie. Okay? All right, let's move on. Let's talk about this recent shutdown. He said he would be proud to shut down the government. The shutdown lasted 35 days, longer than any other shutdown in history. The Trump shutdown furloughed 400,000 federal workers and forced another 400,000 federal workers to work without pay. According to the Congressional Budget Office, the shutdown cost the economy $11 billion, including $3 billion, which was permanently lost. Yet, Acting White House Chief of Staff Mick Mulvaney said Trump is ready to shut down the government again if he doesn't get funding for his border wall. Well, Do you think Donald Trump understands the impact of the shutdown on the families of federal workers and on the broader economy? Trump has he's been a billionaire all of his life. Do you think he has any sense of how difficult it is for most American workers to live without their paychecks? And do you think he really would shut it down again? Do you think he's bluffing about the emergency? What do you think, Nira?
I would say that he may have fantasies about what he wants to do, but I think my sense is that folks in the Senate recognize it was a blunder and an error, and so I don't expect to have another shutdown. Of course, we're not dealing with a rational actor of any kind, so who knows? But I do think the Senate will overturn. I would like to say one thing, which is people have referenced the importance of the midterms and how many people came out. And I know that people came out and went door to door and made calls for all sorts of reasons. But I think a central reason why people work so hard to elect a Democratic House is because we've gone through 2 years of Trump lying, of Trump hurting people, and leaders in Congress just turned the other way. How many times did Paul Ryan say, I didn't see the news of what he said. I don't even know what he did, because the whole idea was to turn the cheek, to bend their knee to this president. And thank God for a Democratic House with Speaker Pelosi, who finally said, enough is enough. You're not getting your crazy, insane, racist border wall. The Democrats are not delivering a result for you. You couldn't get out of the House. And they stood firm. The entire caucus was united. And we've actually had the first real moment where Donald Trump was forced to acknowledge reality. And he blinked, and the Republicans caved, and the Democrats won the shutdown. So I just want to acknowledge the work was also about having some real accountability. But that happened after so many people, innocent people, have been hurt by the policies of this administration. Obviously, we have the 800,000 people, furloughed workers, contractors who will never be paid back, harm to our economy. And so I think the one thing I realize is that when you have a bully, you have to step up and stand up. And so I think he recognizes he lost. His numbers really came down. All this talk of unity we're going to hear in like 50 minutes is just going to be whitewashing the polarization, but he recognizes he has to do that because the shutdown was really such a disaster for him.
You know, the president tries to instill fear in everybody by saying the caravans are coming, the caravans are coming, they're killers, they're rapers, they're drug dealers, but of course they work for him in his various businesses. But he's not afraid of them, but he wants the American people to be afraid of them. Do you think he's going to pull that again tonight?
You know, I think we're going to hear a lot of the same old, tired and really false information that he uses over and over again. When you talk about the shutdown, what was the main point of the shutdown? He wants to be able to say that he's delivered on a political promise. A political promise that he said would be about a wall that Mexico would pay for. We shut down this government. He shut down this government because he's trying to come through on a political promise that should never have been made and that was based on complete false information. We know that this wall will be wasteful, ineffective, and costly. We know that he's tried to use fear tactics and lies about why we need to build this big, massive wall. He's saying we need it because we need to address this massive onslaught. He has deployed in a wasteful way troops to the border that he then has tried to call back, but he's tried to indicate that there's all these people coming over when in reality, net migration is below zero in these last 2 years, especially when you look at from Mexico. The real issue is the fact that these people are coming from desperate situations with the real credible threat of fear, and they're turning themselves in at ports of entry pursuant to what is our law domestically and internationally, and they're seeking asylum. But he's contorting all of that, trying to claim that these folks are coming and crossing the border. The fact is that most of these crossings are happening, they're not happening, they're coming and returning themselves in at ports of entry. Now, if he wants to have a broader conversation about immigration reform, we're ready. We've had a number of different immigration reform bills that have been bipartisan, and we desperately need to address not just what some would argue would be a comprehensive immigration reform, but we have dreamers and TPS holders who have to have some relief because their lives are in limbo. So we should be talking about that, but it should have nothing to do with these falsehoods of fear and threats tied to this shutdown. And so we want to make sure tonight, Unidos US, we're going to be tweeting out and making sure we're fact-checking on everything he says. You're going to hear him talk about some families that have been victimized by some individuals who have been here without papers, but that is the very few people and its tragic circumstances. And nobody is taking anything away from those families and their pain, but he is exploiting their families and that pain to make a political point about a wasteful, ineffective, and costly wall that will serve no purpose and address anything other than a reckless political campaign promise. And we've got to make sure that those in Congress who can stop this will stop this. And we've got to make sure those of us who can use our voice will continue to use our voice and know that we're going to continue to mobilize as voters to not just push back on this irrational policy, but on every other irrational policy that is going to cause real harm to our families and to our communities.
Thank you. Thank you. So let me just say this to you, Mr. Nance. I think that we had all of our intelligence chiefs testify before the Senate, and they talked about where the dangers lie. And I think they mentioned, of course, Russia and China. They didn't say anything about Mexico. They didn't say anything about the border. How is it this president can keep talking about the dangers that we're confronted with from people seeking asylum instead of talking about what's happening with Russia and China getting their heads together on us?
You know, people, when I talk about this on television, people often write to me and they say, you're a partisan, right? You're one of them. Most people don't know I was conservative most of my life. I was Republican most of my life. I was a Colin Powell national security type Republican, now called far left liberal Democrat, right? But it's true. The reason that I was a national security, I was big on national security, is because I understood how this nation was viewed from the polls around the world and how we're seen based on what we do, what we say, and certainly how the principal citizen behaves in the face of the world. If I had to do an intelligence assessment, and I'm not picking on Burundi, so if there's anybody here from Burundi, please don't tweet at me, okay? Or some other country, but I worked sub-Saharan Africa at one point. And I would have to evaluate the president of that country. And that president was operating in the mode that our president was. The assessment from the intelligence community would be so insane that no one would allow me to release the report, right? So what we have here is a president of the United States who is one, I don't even want to use the word intellectually lazy, because that would mean that I would be giving him credit for thinking, okay? He does not think. And I'm saying this straight as someone whose sole job was to collect that information my entire life, process it, make sure that it was the best material possible, and send it up to the National Command Authority, the president and his staff, so that he could evaluate it within the spectrum of the safety and security and good well-being of this nation. This president does not operate in that sphere, which means no matter what we say to him in the intelligence community, what does he say? He knows better than us. To say to Dan Coates, former U.S. Senator, now the Director of National Intelligence, whose sole job every day is to read the worst things about this world, our peer adversaries, Russia, China, and how they are preparing to dominate the 21st century in warfare. How Russia has dominated us in information warfare, using our own freedom of speech as a weapon against us. Because that's what's happened to us in the 2016 election. They just used our own voice, our own social media tools as information cruise missiles to destroy our own nation, to the point where 1/3 of this nation will not believe facts as they are presented and seen by any normal person. They will believe any lie that they are told by Donald Trump. So what does that do for us? Well, one, it makes people like ISIS and Al-Qaeda laugh, because you can put a picture of an Al-Qaeda camp down there, and if it doesn't jive with Donald Trump's worldview that they're actually coming up through Mexico, he won't take action on it. He won't protect the nation. The first thing we swear is to protect and defend the Constitution of the United States, and by extension, every one of you is the Constitution. I put my life on the line. My entire family, going back to 1864, has fought in every war there has been a Nance, because we believe those words, and we also believe e pluribus unum, from many one. If someone were to say to me, Malcolm, we have a caravan forming in Guatemala that's being funded by we don't know who, people who are going to walk 1,100 miles by foot, then jump on dangerous trains to come stand at a port of entry so that they can apply for asylum, I'd say that's what I fought for, right? It's the law, and no one is saying that this is the law. You're the first person tonight to come out and say this is all completely legal. It's being turned into something illegal. The soldiers going down there, 3,000 active duty soldiers, waste of time. They should be at range. They should be doing urban warfare training. They should be painting rocks, all the things that we do for readiness, right? They should not be laying concertina wire, which is what we hire contractors to do. So all I can say to you is intelligence means nothing to a stupid man, right?
Okay, Monica, this shutdown was very hard. These federal workers, many living paycheck to paycheck, was forced to go to food banks, etc. And of course, working with women's issues, we know that there are a lot of single parent families with children. Many of them, or some of them, could be federal workers. What do you think about shutting down this country in the way that this president did? And what impact do you believe it had on these families?
So when I think about the shutdown, what I really think about is how the conservatives in this country do not actually want a government that works, right? Like, they don't believe in government. They are trying to get rid of the laws. They are trying to get rid of taxes. And so we should look around and say, when you get rid of these laws, when you get rid of taxes, when you stop the government, people suffer, right? Like, families cannot get food. And there's such a disconnect between people that are voting for Trump who are suffering and people that still think that we should have fewer laws, fewer taxes, that we should roll back regulation that's going to make this country better. So I don't know if Trump is going to have another shutdown. I have no idea what this man is going to do. It's very hard to figure out what he will do besides eat cheeseburgers and watch TV all day. Right, a lot of executive time. But what I do know is, 2020 is right around the corner. And, we've spent a lot of time talking about Trump and a lot of time talking about immigration. Immigration is not a huge problem in America, right? It's something that he thinks is a problem, but actually these are people that are making our country stronger. And so I think we just need to think about, we were talking about the media and, what they focus on. And they focus on Trump because he's a clown and he's interesting and his messaging is idiotic, but it's simple. A wall is very easy to understand. And so we need to think about our Democrats, our progressives putting forward strong messaging, strong policies, radical ideas, the way that Trump was, but ones that are actually sensical, So I think we need to look at people like obviously Ocasio, who's talking about a Green New Deal, people that are talking about Medicare for all, and looking at what future candidates are actually going to be able to beat Trump, because I recently, for some reason, was rewatching one of the first debates where he was debating 9 other Republicans, and he was dominating the debate because his words, they are idiotic, but they are simple and they are easy to understand. And right now, we have a lot of great candidates on the left, but I don't see anyone that is as masterful as he is, unfortunately, at messaging. And so I really think we should think about, what is our plan for 2020? Let's maybe stop talking so much about Trump and immigration, which, he's already winning when we're talking about immigration, and think about what are the issues that we really want to focus on and how are we going to win, because we cannot have 4 more years of this man.
You talked about your somewhat disappointment in a lack of involvement and people really showing that they care. If he shuts down this government again, what would you like to see people do?
Stop filming for a second, please. No. I think it's going to take Republicans, honestly, to reason with this president. And I think that's one of the reasons why he won't declare a national emergency tonight, because that would force Nancy Pelosi, House Speaker Pelosi, could force the Republicans to vote and come out and say where they stand. And they have been complicit at every step with this president in every awful, deplorable thing that he's done. So should this shutdown happen, I would lean on the people in his party. I mean, we saw everybody on the left. We saw Democrats come out and try to reason with people. We even saw Trump supporters come out and say how they're hurting. Even people who, voted for him and said they would vote for him again said they don't think the shutdown is worth the wall and what they were going through. One of the things that I think helped in this shutdown was the NFL. I think his rich billionaire NFL owner friends were going to be really perturbed if millions of people could not make their way to Atlanta to go to the Super Bowl. I really do. And I think that's why he ended the shutdown. I think it's the air traffic controllers and things that were happening. They couldn't have blood on their hands. And I think it would take something that drastic. I was on the Hill 2 weeks ago moderating a conversation with Chairman Benny Thompson, and we had a lot of former Obama officials on there from Homeland Security, TSA, and I asked them point blank, is it safe to fly right now? And nobody could give a really direct answer on that question. And I think somebody penetrated this willful ignorance of this president and said, you're going to have blood on your hands. There's going to be death on your watch that you'll have to explain and answer for to the American people. So unfortunately, I think it would take something that drastic. I don't think he would do it again. Again, I echo your concerns. Nobody knows, nobody can predict what this president will do. But I don't think I think his only route is to go to declare a national emergency, which would inevitably get caught up in the courts, which he can still say to his base, I tried to build the wall, but the Democrats don't care, and that's his only recourse. I don't even think he wants to shut down the government again. And I just want to point out and remind everybody, because in this news cycle, we can forget things that happen. There's no longer a 24-hour news cycle. Now we have like a 30-minute news cycle. But I just want to remind the people that this swamp that he employs, when Wilbur Ross said, I don't understand why all these people are going to food banks. Just sell one of your Picassos already and, go ask for a loan. that's really the mentality that you're dealing with this administration. Not everybody has a billionaire father to fund their future bankrupted businesses. You know, not everybody has a safety net that they can fall on every time they fail. And so all these people who have manipulated the American people to say they're champion for the working men don't understand what it means to live check to check. My own family was impacted by the shutdown. My mother is somebody who, you know, struggles financially, and her life was impacted by the shutdown. So it's different when you have something that you can touch and see and feel, that you can immediately understand their suffering, and this president doesn't have anybody around him like that.
Loan. Come on, you know you can get a loan from the bank anytime you need it, right?
Maybe after your chair wanted.
I think it's important to understand the disconnect that Wilbur Ross would say that. So, look, Lincoln, what do young people think about all of this? What do they understand about this president and these elected officials and what's going on with all of this? I mean, can you help us a bit to tell us what you have learned in your interaction working with Teen Vogue?
Okay, so in terms of the shutdown, I'll just touch on that really quickly. The shutdown, I believe, most likely will happen again if he determines that it can hurt people. There's this idea that Donald Trump isn't getting what he wants, or that he's losing. Donald Trump he's not really losing as much as you guys think he's losing. And I'll tell you the disconnect that we see with young people. The disconnect is that when you're here in Washington and you walk through these halls and you look at wins in terms of bills passed and these kind of things, you get very caught up in the idea that we blocked this, so it's done. We won this round. And then when you look at the amount of pain that he instills in people's lives, he is not losing. The shutdown wasn't his loss amongst his base. Amongst his base, it was those damn Democrats wouldn't just build the friggin' wall so we could just get back to government. That's what people look at it as. The disconnect that you're going to see amongst many young people, and the reason why some young people are politically disenfranchised is because, and I'm not saying this just because I'm speaking to you, but there's not a lot of yous. Congresswoman Mack or Waters, there's not a lot of yous. There's a lot of cowards. There's a lot of cowards. And I don't want to call out a certain gentleman's name because he's running for president, but if you can't call someone a racist when they ask you, then that means to me as a young person, you've lost my vote. I can't even talk to you anymore. If you can't call him out as a racist, so now you have people who are running for office and they're saying, is Donald Trump a racist? Well, you know, I don't really know what's in his heart, what's in his small intestine. Is it racism? I don't know. That's not what racism is. Donald Trump is a white supremacist. Donald Trump is an Islamophobe. Donald Trump does not like trans people. Donald Trump does not support the LGBTQ community. And when you look at what he's instilled since he's been in office, he has helped to hurt those people. We have a travel ban, which I don't ever refer to as a travel ban. That's the issue that me and my office have. It is a Muslim ban, right? He has now listen, let me tell you something. I think I'm a pretty brave person. I'm not going to war. That's not the kind of way I was built. When I see people who want to go to war and to fight, I have the utmost respect for them. And now he's saying, because of your gender identity, you can't go fight. And the fact that there's people who come to these halls and they have these discussions where they say, you know, the bill wasn't passed last night. We got a success. Yeah, we have a stay over here. And there's people who are really being hurt by this, and young people who are seeing people really being hurt by this, and they're saying, this is messed up. Why are you guys not fighting more passionately? And that's why I'm saying, literally, there needs to be more use. If we if there is the first Democratic primary, and we see these debates, and there's a whole bunch of, well, how would you stop Trump? Well, what I would do. I would take some bills and I would tell them, sir, you're not going to pass that. That's not what people want. The young people want someone who's going to at the very least, just speak truth to power. If you have a difficulty calling him a racist or a white supremacist or saying he's Islamophobic and saying that he's transphobic, then you have no business trying to represent the young people in America. And when they don't come out to your rallies and when they don't come out to hear what you have to say, don't ask them, why didn't you come listen to me? I was rallying. I'm on your side. Are you? Because if you're not going to say anything about what he's doing in the way that I feel, as passionately as I feel, then you don't represent me at all.
Okay, I know you have to leave, and thank you. Give her a big round of applause as she leaves. Thank you. I just have to piggyback for one moment on something that you said. There was one member of Congress who was asked if he was a racist. He says, oh no, he's not a racist, he's racial. What? That's the kind of stuff you're talking about. Can I just give someone a big shout out? Yes. I'm getting ready to do it now. Hold it, hold it, hold it. Courage, not afraid, speaking truth to power. Introduce to the Congress of the United States the first bill on impeachment. Congressman Al Green, come on, come on.
Thank you very much. Yes, he's a racist. If you would kindly look around the room and take a look at all of these pictures on the wall. That picture right there is Mr. Henseling, dear friend of mine. That picture was just placed there because he's no longer the chair of the committee. You have something to look forward to because at some point, that picture will move over to this wall. And that picture, this picture will move over there, and this picture will move. And for the very first time in the history of the Congress of the United States of America, there will be the picture of a black, proud, unbought, unbossed black woman. The Honorable Maxine Waters will be on that wall, on that wall, that wall, on that wall. The Honorable Maxine Waters will be on that wall, on that wall, on that wall.
Well, let me just say that thank you, Congressman, for sharing in the way that you just did. That absolutely honored me in a very special way, talking about the position that I now have and the fact that serving could cause me to be on that wall. But more than that, I'm so pleased that you came by. Because he's taken a lot of heat. He's taken a lot of heat because he dared to say, I don't care whether or not we have Republican support. I don't care whether or not Democrats are saying don't do it. Don't make his constituents angry. Because if you do, you will embolden them. We know who they are. What are we talking about? They're never going to vote with us. And so we don't believe that. And of course, Sheila Jackson Lee was here, who serves on the Judiciary Committee, and that's where the resolution for impeachment actually starts. if they don't move to take up something by another member in the way that Al Green has introduced it. So I want you to know that he is to be applauded for his courage. He has not backed down. He did not wait for the pundits or the politicians who think they know everything to tell him how to do it, what to do, what not to do. He wrote it himself. And he put inside the impeachment articles what he thought was extremely important. And it was not simply about collusion. It was not simply about obstruction of justice. It talked about racism. And it talked about inhumanity. It talked about the kind of issues that he decided need to be in an impeachment resolution. Thank you, Al Green, for what you did and what you're doing. Give him a big round of applause. And now, I know that some of our panelists have to leave. It's getting on toward 9 o'clock. Give them all a big round of applause. I want to ask them a question. Has this been valuable to you? Should we do more of these? Okay, now that we have control of the room, we're going to use it, okay? All right. To all of our panelists, we have a few minutes and we're going to take some questions and comments. If you'd like to stay, we'd like you to stay if you can. If you have to leave, we do understand. Okay, all right. Thank you so much. Thank you. Big round of applause, please. Thank you. No, 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 and we like you being right here because you got a lot of fire in you. Stay here. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to take some questions first. We'll take a few. And then we know people have things they'd like to share. So we're going to get some comments, you know. Most of the time they say you can ask questions, but you can give some advice. You can share some thoughts. So let's start with, and you can call on the people. Okay. Will you identify? Let's start from left to right. And if you have a question, please raise your hand. We're going to go from left to right. You have a question? If you have a comment excuse me, we have a hand here. Okay, we have a question. Okay, then we'll come back over here. Yes, come on. You're right near. Okay.
Okay. How you doing? Really love what you had to say. Over there, I see you. You're very busy. Okay. Love what you had to say about the senator who we're not going to name right now. My question, you know, because I feel the same way you do. You have to speak out against it. You have to kind of be clear. You know, you can't dilly-dally when it comes to stuff like racism. It's racism, okay? My question is, who do you see? Because right now I'm having a hard time, you know, like, just thinking or finding a candidate, you know, that I actually think is viable. Yeah, that's my question.
Okay, so I look at candidates a little bit different than other people look at candidates. I don't just look at the candidate as who this person is today and thinking that that person, who they are today, is going to be who they will be for the next 4 to 8 years. Because people change. And I'll say that because if some of you remember, Senator Obama wasn't the most progressive man in the world. He was not. And if you looked at the policies, the things that he's even advocated for on the campaign trail, not a super progressive guy. But the thing that you have seen, that you would have noticed if you really dug into President Obama's life, even before becoming a senator, is that he showed you the capability for progressive growth. That is, I think, the key that we need to look at. There is no one running who is Mr. or Mrs. Super Progressive. I do not think we're going to get that in this election run. But the question is, how capable are they of progressing, and also, who are they willing to surround themselves with? One of the most important points that Congresswoman Waters has been talking about frequently is that it's who you surround yourself with tells us a lot about what your campaign's going to be. The problem with Trump is that he brought in Ben Carson and gave him power. He gave Betsy DeVos power. He gave all of the worst people, the most ahistorical, anti-intellectual, he gave them power. So the question is, when you look at a candidate, ask yourself, who do they surround themselves with? Are they willing to surround themselves with people who will push them? Are they willing to surround themselves with people who are progressive in some sense? Or are they just someone who surrounds themselves with people who parrot the same talking points that they do? So that's the one thing that you want to look at. You want to look at, has this person shown you that they've been progressive, and have they surrounded themselves with enough sensible people that makes you think that they can listen to better ideas when they actually get in office?
Well, we told you some of the people he surrounded himself with. We told you early on who his allies were, and the fact that they were all connected in some way to either, Putin or the oligarchs, the Kremlin. And we also talked about, some of those who had records already that we should have been aware of. And we saw Michael Flynn in the campaign and the way that he conducted himself. I'd never seen anybody at that level do what he did in the way that he attacked Hillary Clinton. And so the other thing is this. In looking at the candidates, we get carried away with a lot of things that have nothing to do with good policy. Oh, I know he's going to do well because he's good looking. Give me a ugly, good policy person any day. Right? Also, they think that we should select somebody because of their color. We have to be careful about that. All right? We have to be careful about that. The other thing, for those of you who attend church, you allow candidates to come to your church, they learn a Bible verse the night before, and then they give it back to you, and the preacher gets up and talk about he's a man of God. Vote for him. Stop it. Stop doing that. And the other thing is, we allow other people to organize these so-called debates, and we sit back and watch them, and they've all been worked out. What if millennials got together in big numbers and said, you come before us and debate? All right, this is what I'm telling you. They have to come if you do that, and if they come, ask the hard questions. I mean, a lot of what I hear are generalities and generalizations about the promise and about, good Americans deserving. No, come on, let's get down to it. And so I am tonight kind of saying, I believe that there is room for a debate that's organized by young people, that's never been done before. And I want you to think about that. Because until you exercise the power that you have, and you do have power, you really do have power, but until you exercise it, they're not going to act in ways that you think they should act as your leaders, in this country. All right, another question. Okay, they're gonna come over.
So good evening, my name is Dean Pelais, and my question was to touch upon the millennial topic here, and as you mentioned, we need more youth on this side, and the question now begs, where are the youth that are not motivated? there are some that are here, but I feel as you that there aren't enough. So I'm from the Bronx, New York City, and my question to it is, how can we motivate more students, more young leaders to kind of like rise up and get motivated to start pushing forward? I myself am active on 3 nonprofit organizations, one recently called Diverse Influencers and Alpha, and other one is called MOT Career Prep, where we help diversity students kind of tap into like schools from the sophomore and 18-month program to kind of push them and motivate them. So those are some of the steps that I take, but how are other ways that we can motivate those that are unaware and unexposed?
I actually think that it starts in the streets. A lot of people sometimes think like, how can we get more young people into like internships, or how can we get young people exposed to this? And I actually don't think they necessarily need to be. I think the first step for a lot of people is the streets. When I got to interview John Lewis, he talked about it. He was in the streets. He was in the streets getting his head beaten before he ever dreamed of coming here. You know what I mean? When I talked to Patrice Cullors from Black Lives Matter, when they first hit the streets after the Trayvon Martin trial, after the verdict, they didn't think of this. They were in the streets. So the question is, you have to get people passionate about the things that they care about, and then show them, as they're already on that path of passion, show them where they can direct that passion to. And I think that's how you're going to see more political involvement. It's through activism. And we need to be very, very clear in supporting activists. We cannot let the media narrative overtake it to make the demonization of activism and the demonization of being in the street take over. We have to let them know, get in the streets, get active, get in the streets. And then when they understand what's going on, that's when they'll find their way here. And that's how you'll find your next representatives.
Let me just say that I believe in organizing. I believe that there are different ways to organize. And I think that millennials have to come up with their own ways of organizing. I mean, instead of a politician, get Cardi B or somebody, you know what I'm saying? I mean, do it differently. Do it in your style and in your way. Don't think about what politicians used to do and how they did it, or what so-called leaders did. Don't think about that at all. What you know is extremely important, and sometimes you don't think what you know is powerful or important, but it is. Think about ways to get young people together that we don't think about, we don't know about. You know what I'm saying? And start to organize and bring people together. And take one issue in your community. I don't care whether it's a street light, or whether it's somebody that got killed, got targeted by the police, or what that issue is. Move on it. Organize people around it while people are thinking about it, and organize it in ways that, mean something to people. And so in the streets is where it is. Thank you. Next. Over here. You better come here because she's about to jump up and get you.
My question is for the Congresswoman. I want to know what advice do you have for Black girls navigating in this white, male-dominated space?
Ooh. Well, one of the things I talk a lot about is developing confidence in yourself. And oftentimes, even in our own families, we are not reared to believe that we are extremely important, that we can do what we want to do, that we look good, we've got something to say, and somebody is listening to you. And so at some point in time, we've got to come to grips with whom we are and what we think about ourselves. And so when you begin to get in touch with yourself and believe that, yeah, you're just as smart as anybody else. You're just as important as anybody else. And stop and listen to what you got to say. When people shut you down, you shut them down. And when they say, oh, you don't know what you're talking about, you have to get a little tough. Oh, hell, yes, I do know what I'm talking about. You know what I'm saying? You got to get with it. Get with it and believe in yourself. Forget about what people told you you're not and what you can't be, and nobody's listening to you. This world belongs to you, and it's only going to be what you're going to make it. It's been messed up by a lot of folks. And a lot of people will say to you, we're depending on you to turn this around and to provide our leaders. But what they're not saying to you is that we believe in you. And we want you to believe in yourself. So that's the first thing. I want to tell you, you're going to step into situations all the time, and you're going to question yourself. Even Hillary Clinton questioned herself. I was at the debate in St. Louis, Missouri, when Trump followed her around, breathed down her neck, intimidated her. He was snorting and carrying on. I mean, it was really ugly. And she said she really wanted to say, get off my back, you idiot, or something like that. But she had been told by the political pundits, women don't talk that way. And if you talk that way, you know, it will be a negative thing for you in the campaign. So no matter what he says, you just be a lady. No, absolutely not. Don't let anybody take you down like that, okay? All right, next. Where's my guy? Oh, okay.
Okay, my question is kind of to piggyback off what she said. Like, how do you demand things without making it seem like you're not being authentic to yourself? Because one problem that I run into is I have to be someone that I'm not. Or just because you're a black woman, you have to wait 10 to 15 years and then you can be yourself. And I don't want to do that. So what is your advice on that?
Don't do it.
Yeah.
That's my advice. And let me just say this, and this is not to disparage or put anybody down. You are taught, for the most part, and socialized to be nice. You are taught that, now, listen, if you get educated, if you go to school, and always look nice. We want you to, you know, dress a certain way, and then when you get the job, speak correctly and don't piss your boss off. And if somebody insults you, look, don't let that get in the way of you getting a promotion. You ain't gonna get the promotion anyway. You know what I'm saying? Only way you're gonna get the promotion is that you fight for what you think you deserve. And so please step outside of the talk oftentimes that you've been even reared and socialized on about absolutely not making other people mad. Hell, you want to walk around mad, quiet, while other people are making you mad and you're not turning it on them? I want you to think about everything that you've been told. First of all, your parents, for the most part, are certainly looking out for your best interests. But most of the time, they are hovering over you. And they are keeping you from being everything that you want to be because they're afraid. They don't want you to be hurt. They don't want you to be insulted. They don't want you to be treated badly. But you got to stand up for yourself. You got to stand up for yourself. Demand what you know is right, whether it's in the workplace or any other place that you're being. Don't wait until you get so old that you can't fight. You got to go after it. So, and I hear this from a lot of black girls these days about how do I get respected? How do I get chosen for the job that I deserve because I have the background and experience and all of that? You've got to walk in the door with confidence. You got to sit down at an interview and say, I came to get my job. Are you ready for me? Because I'm ready for this job. I am smart. I am good. I have worked hard. I deserve it. And if you hire me, I'll be the best employee you ever had. Okay? So I want that kind of confidence. Okay. Okay, let's get some more.
So many questions. All right.
Hi, Maxine Waters. I'm from Center for Popular Democracy, based in New York, but I'm from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Yesterday, I was in Virginia, and I met with a lot of people my age, I'm 22 years old, who put their faith in Governor Northam, and for him to do what he was supposed to do and expected to do, but he showed his true colors. And as I go over to a lot of other states to help with getting people registered to vote and helping them to inspire people my age to vote and stuff like that, they feel like their vote doesn't count. And when you see an incident like Governor Rotham yesterday, it just goes to show a little bit that they're a little bit right sometimes, or they feel like they're right sometimes, that their voice doesn't matter, because it's a huge slap in the face to have a governor sit and have racial intentions to post it. It's just like racism. He's racist. He's a racist, and it's clear that he's a racist. Apology doesn't matter. It's just a racist. And people in that community, Virginia, especially Union Hill, worked very hard to get him in office, and now it's a huge slap in the face. And what would you say to the teenagers, especially in Virginia, that had their faith in Governor Rotham, and now they feel like their faith has gone to waste?
You know, I've been, listening to what he said, the press conference that he had, and what elected officials are saying, the excuses some are making, the way that some are gingerly urging him to get out. But, I believe that if enough people and enough millennials, and I keep referring to millennials because I want you to take leadership. If you organized and you went to the Capitol or wherever he is and said, go home, we don't want you anymore. Okay, but I want large numbers. I want big numbers. I want something that's identified as millennials are telling you to go home. Forget about, what the politicians are saying, that's fine. But some of them are saying it in such a way. Well, I've worked with him for so long, and he's a very nice man, really. And, it's not something that, we expected of him, and, I just couldn't believe it. But I want you, come on, get rid of the dribble. Get rid of the dribble. And I want millennials to take a big effort, because you're right now at the point where people know you exist now. You've done a great job. And it kind of started with Bernie's campaign. You've done a great job of saying, hey, here we are. And we're not happy. We're not quite satisfied. We're not getting the careers that you promised us we would get. We're not, And so I would like to see millennials say, okay, move over. We're going to take charge on this issue. And we're going to get together with thousands of us. We're going to get to tweeting, and we're going to get on the internet, and we're going to get people to come out, and we're going up to the governor's office and say, move over, everybody. Mr. Governor, your time is over. We want you out. And guess what? You can move him out. Do you believe that? I didn't hear you. All right. I want you to take an issue and drive it. And I want you to say, millennials are tired of you and people like you. We want you out of office. We want you to leave now. You can get it done, all right? Let's try it. Think about it. Let's try it. Thank you. Next question.
Good evening, Representative. Good evening, sir. Thank you for being here. My question is this. There's the old adage, Republicans fall in line while Democrats fall in love. And you've been in Congress for many years, and I thank you for all the years of service that you've given. Do you ever fear that there is a cannibalization of our party or our pragmatic goals because of that adage? In 2000, there was, Bush was sentenced to the office by one state of a few counties. In this election, we saw that there were a record number of millennials coming out. But at the same time, there was a message that alienated many moderate voters. And there are things that I, as someone from Kansas, can agree to. There are other things that, when I go to my school in LA, USC, that doesn't exactly fly with a lot of my colleagues. And I was wondering, if we truly want to unite people who might be, number one, disenfranchised, but number two, on the verge, how can we create a message, a narrative that truly unites people of all parties, of a coalition that doesn't alienate people and doesn't do what who we perceive as immoral people do?
Yeah, big question. Let me first say this. The difficulty in uniting and bringing people together in ways that we know will work is they have to unlearn and undo everything that they've been socialized with. And even if it has not been kind of an overt teaching, there are things that are implanted in young people that puts them in a position of believing that they're so much better than somebody else, than other people's. And there is so much that goes on in the socialization process that you don't even realize that you're not about really loving everybody, respecting everybody, but you're more taught to put up with folks because they're not quite as good as you are. They don't work as hard as you do. They don't believe in God as much as you believe. Whatever it is. And so that has to be undone and unlearned. Some people and some families do better at it than others. But what I'm hopeful for is this, that there will be enough leadership that helps that process. And when you, the young people, talk about authenticity and you talk about courage, I think you're tapping into what is needed in order to bring people together and to have some truth in the discussions and have some confrontation about, what has been going on, even sometimes testimonials, as we would say in church, about what I thought and the way that I acted. But now I know, now I understand. I kind of understand how public policy is developed and what these politicians are saying and why it makes sense or it doesn't make good sense. And so we've all got to do the best that we can to try and help unlearn what we have learned. Because if I asked half of you what your grandmama said, even what some of your mamas and daddies said to you, you wouldn't even want to tell me, because you know that many of them have said things that now you know may not be true, or certainly won't be helpful in bringing people together. So a lot of the responsibility lies with you as individuals. The fact that you came out here tonight and you go to these kinds of events and you're talking in different ways means you're on your way. I mean, you're on your way. You are absolutely on your way. You have rejected much of the teachings, much of what you have learned, to this point in your life. And having done that, we are depending on millennials. And I have great hopes, for millennials. You're at a point in time in your life where you can make a difference in your cities, in your counties, in your states, in this world. And, I want to tell you, despite the fact that you've heard me say a lot about this president, I called him deceptive, deplorable, and every other thing that I could think of. You know what? Thank God he's revealed himself to us. And we know who he is. And we understand what he's all about. Because that should empower us to say all this that I'm trying to unlearn, all of this that I'm now learning about, and the things that I want to do and what I want to be, I know now what I have to do. And so I'm optimistic. I go to bed some nights very disgusted and thinking, what other lie can I hear today? What other, excuse can I hear from one of my colleagues about what can't be done and why we shouldn't be doing it, why we won't be able to raise money if we don't do this or we don't do that. But after a good night's sleep, and I wake up the next day, I'm ready to roll. I'm ready to roll because I know that unless I am about the business of speaking truth to power and trying to change the world as I know it and trying to bring people together, if I can't do that, I'm not worth my salt and I don't need to be an elected official.
Sorry, just to answer your question, I just want to make one quick point. I'm all for moderate coalition building, but I'm not going to sacrifice my humanity for someone's comfort. I'm not sacrificing my humanity for your vote. I'm not doing anything like that. Sometimes when I hear moderate coalition, what I hear is someone who says, I can agree with you on this finance thing, but what about them gay people? I don't want that. And it's like, let's build a coalition together. Nah, fam, I'm good. So that's why I say I'm all for moderate coalition building, but at this time, if you are living in America today and you see what's on the right and your choice is, let me just find myself comfortably somewhere in the middle, then I don't know if I trust you. I don't know if I trust you. So I'm here for moderate coalition building, but we have to also be clear about what moderate means.
But let me just say this, he's absolutely right, but let me just say this, because you don't give yourselves enough credit for some things that you have already done. I want to tell you, it is because of you that we have such acceptance now of people who think differently, who love differently, people who have, defined themselves in ways that our parents and grandparents and others never would thought of. And because of you, we have a real LGBTQ community that's active and involved. It would not have happened without you. Do you know that? Do you understand that? Well, give yourselves a great round of applause anyway. Okay, they're telling me that we're going to have to shut it down. I guess he started to talk. And so, you want to change the screen? Okay, now, some of you might want to get up and leave, but be a little tolerant. Let's listen to what he's got to say. The more we know about him, the more we can talk about him, okay? All right, so change the screen and let's go. Give the staff a big round of applause. Yeah, I want you to know that Rakia has been working very, very hard. Okay, all right, there they are. Do we turn the lights down? Do we have any popcorn? What's going on? We have more snacks? Okay. Oh, that was millennia, right? What's her motto? What's her motto?
Be best.
Okay, be best.
I stand here ready to work with
best.
you to achieve historic breakthroughs for all Americans. Millions of our fellow citizens are watching us now gathered in this great chamber, hoping that we will govern not as two parties, but as one nation. The agenda I will lay out this evening is not a Republican agenda or a Democrat agenda. It's the agenda of the American people. Many of us have campaigned on the same core promises: to defend American jobs and demand fair trade for American workers, to rebuild and revitalize our nation's infrastructure, to reduce the price of health care and prescription drugs, to create an immigration system that is safe